My name is Magos Biologis Eryn Sath, Adeptus Mechanicus, Forge World Tessiver, Senior Xenological Research Division. I have 47 years of sanctioned Xenos study under my mechadendrites. I have written 19 classified papers on Xenos biology, cognition, and social architecture. I have dissected 11 Xenos specimens in the name of the omniscience knowledge. I am telling you this because I need you to understand what I was before I tell you what I became. And what I became is something the Lexicon Mechanicus does not have a term for, because the Mechanicus has not needed a term for it until now. I fell in love with the Xenos, not with the species. Not with the abstract intellectual fascination that every xenobiologist develops for their subject, the kind that is technically permitted, even encouraged, in the name of complete analytical understanding, with a specific individual, with her, with the quality of her mind and the precision of her curiosity and the way she communicated in a visual language so structurally elegant that decoding it felt like mathematics and music occurring simultaneously. I am going to tell you what she was. I am going to tell you what happened between us. And I am going to tell you the thing the Mechanicus cannot process, the thing that broke their entire framework for what I am, which is that I do not regret a single data point of it. Note, I am going to tell you what she was. I am going to tell you what happened between us. And I am going to tell you the thing that the Mechanicus cannot process, the thing that broke their entire framework for what I am, which is that I do not regret a single data point of it. The species is classified under the Xenological Index as Genus Aethon, category Gamma Cryptic, meaning minimal aggression profile, high cognition indicators, unknown social structure. In the field they are called Veilkin by the explorators who first catalogued them because of the translucent membrane structures that extend from their upper body when they communicate, thin, iridescent, like light through silk. They are approximately humanoid in overall proportion, but the similarity ends there. 3 primary limbs, bioluminescent sensory clusters where a human face would be. Communication through a combination of membrane pattern and directed biophotonic emission. A visual language of extraordinary complexity. I was assigned to study a single specimen, female, by the reproductive biology markers, though the Mechanicus files simply recorded as Unit 1. She had been recovered during a rogue trader survey operation in the Ithcan Gulf. She was cooperative from the first day. Not passive, cooperative. There is a difference. She engaged with every test I ran. She solved every puzzle I presented. She watched me with her bioluminescent clusters in a way that made my augmented sensory suite register something I had not experienced in 31 years of Mechanicus service, the specific feeling of being studied in return. I catalogued it as anomalous data. I noted it in my logs as a possible indicator of elevated empathic cognition. I did not note what I actually felt, which was that for the first time in my career I was not certain which of us was the specimen. On the 31st day of the study, she stopped responding to my standard approach protocols. Instead, she did something that no Xenos specimen in 19 years of my research had ever done. She asked me a question. Not in any language I had taught her, in mine. Note, on the 31st day of the study, she stopped responding to my standard approach protocols. Instead, she did something that no Xenos specimen in 19 years of my research had ever done. She asked me a question. Not in any language I had taught her, in mine. The question was, "Are you afraid of me?" For words, Low Gothic, pronounced with the careful precision of someone who had assembled the phonemes from observation rather than instruction. She had watched my mouth form words for 31 days and reverse-engineered the mechanism. I did not answer immediately. I ran a full diagnostic on my auditory implants because my first assumption was malfunction. The implants were functioning correctly. I then ran a probability analysis on the likelihood that what I had heard was a coincidental acoustic pattern. The probability was vanishingly small. She had spoken to me. In my language, deliberately. I answered honestly, the only response that seemed appropriate to the scale of what had just happened. I said, "No." She processed this for what my internal chronometer recorded as 14 seconds. Then her membranes extended in a pattern I had catalogued on day 7 as the equivalent of a smile, or the closest thing her biology produced to the social signal a smile represents. What followed over the next 3 months I can only describe as the most complete communication I have experienced in 47 years of existence, 6 of which predate my Mechanicus augmentation and therefore include the full range of unmodified human social experience. We built a language together, not hers, not mine, ours. She contributed membrane pattern elements I learned to read with a secondary optical implant I recalibrated specifically for her biophotonic frequency. I contributed Low Gothic syntax she refined and restructured with a grammatical elegance that made my original construction look clumsy. We talked about everything: cognition, memory, the experience of existing in a body that had been modified, mine by choice and doctrine, hers by the incomprehensible process of her species development. She had been teaching herself my language from my behavior for 31 days. She had been studying me the way I had been studying her. And in her first sentence to me, in perfectly structured Low Gothic with an accent that sounded like someone who had learned language from watching rather than hearing, she asked, "Do you understand what you are doing to me by keeping me here?" Note: she had been teaching herself my language from my behavior for 31 days. She had been studying me the way I had been studying her. And in her first sentence to me, in perfectly structured Low Gothic with an accent that sounded like someone who had learned language from watching rather than hearing, she asked, "Do you understand what you are doing to me by keeping me here?" I sat with that question for 11 days. I want to be precise about this because I am aware of how the Mechanicus will read this testimony, and I want the record to reflect that I did not act impulsively. I ran the question through every analytical framework I possessed. Legally, Unit 1 was classified Xenos property of the Adeptus Mechanicus, recovered under Rogue Trader Survey Protocol, with no status beyond research specimen. Theologically, the Omnissiah's doctrine on Xenos cognition is explicit. Intelligence in a Xenos does not confer personhood under imperial law, and the pursuit of knowledge requires the study of all things, including living things. Practically, the study had produced more xenological data in 3 months than my division had accumulated in the previous decade, and terminating it prematurely would be professionally costly. Every framework I applied returned the same answer: continue the study. I applied them all again, same answer. I then did something the Mechanicus does not formally recognize as a valid analytical tool. I asked her what she wanted. She told me. She told me about her species' migration patterns, that the Veilkin do not have fixed homes. They travel between star systems in biological vessels grown for the purpose, following routes their ancestors mapped over millennia. She told me that she had been separated from her migration group during the Rogue Trader survey. She told me that without rejoining them within a specific window, the biological cultural continuity of her particular line would be permanently broken, a form of death her species recognized as worse than physical death. I filed a research report stating that Unit 1 had expired due to specimen stress complications. I falsified every biomonitor reading for the preceding 72 hours. I deleted 3 months of research logs. And then I opened the containment unit, handed her the encoded navigation data I had spent for nights compiling, and I said, "I understand now. Go." Listen, I filed a research report stating that Unit 1 had expired due to specimen stress complications. I falsified every biomonitor reading for the preceding 72 hours. I deleted 3 months of research logs. And then I opened the containment unit, handed her the encoded navigation data I had spent for nights compiling, and I said, "I understand now. Go." She left. I watched her go on the external sensors until her biosignature moved beyond scanner range, which took approximately 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Then I filed my falsified report. Then I sat in the empty containment unit for my internal chronometer recorded it as 2 hours and 43 minutes. But the chronometer may have been experiencing calibration issues because it did not feel like 2 hours and 43 minutes. It felt like the specific duration of understanding that something is permanently over. The Mechanicus investigation took 6 months. They found inconsistencies in the biomonitor data. They questioned me extensively. I maintained the contamination narrative. The investigation was inconclusive, the falsification was thorough enough, and the genuine research data I had contributed to the division over the preceding decade was substantial enough that the institutional cost of a full purge exceeded the institutional benefit. I received a formal notation of concern in my service record and a reassignment to a less sensitive research division. I am currently cataloging mineral compositions on a largely uninhabited survey world. It is quiet work, accurate work. The kind of work that requires precision and patience and nothing else. I do it well. What I carry, and I am precise about this word, carry, because it is weight and I have chosen not to put it down, is the 3 months of shared language we built. I still think in it sometimes. When I encounter a problem with unusual structural elegance, I find myself reaching for the membrane pattern notation she contributed, the grammatical architecture that made my clumsy Low Gothic look like a rough draft. I do not know if she rejoined her migration group. I do not know if the window was still open when she reached them. I do not know her name. She gave me a biophotonic designation that I recorded but cannot reproduce in any medium this tribunal accepts. I know that she asked me if I was afraid of her and I said no. I know that was true then. I know it is still true. And I know that the Omnissiah, if the Omnissiah is what the Mechanicus says he is, the God of all knowledge and all things that think, made her mind as precisely as he made mine. I refuse to believe he made it to be studied and discarded. I refuse. And if that refusal costs me my red robes, then the red robes were measuring the wrong thing all along. Magos Eryn Sath is cataloging minerals on a survey world. She is drawing in a notation system the Mechanicus cannot classify. Somewhere in the galaxy, the Veilkin migration continues. Two minds that built a language together, and only one of them knows the other's name. If this story found something in you that your own classification system doesn't have a category for, like, comment, share and subscribe, because next video, another confession, another thing the Imperium was not built to hear. And in the comments, tell me, does the Omnissiah's domain include what she felt? I genuinely want to know what this community believes.